Up, and I'm here with my guest this morning. I've got Presiding Commissioner Darrell Skiles here this morning. Good morning, Darrell.
Good morning, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Yourself?
Real good, real good. Great to be here. It's a nice morning out there, starting off a little warm. Probably going to get a little warm today, I expect. I haven't heard a weather forecast, but
Yeah, it's not supposed to be as bad as yesterday. And then tomorrow is supposed to be the pick of the next 7 days. We're still looking at highs near 90, but the humidity is supposed to be down, and our heat index value down there in the lower 90s, which is good news. Yesterday was pretty miserable no matter where you were in South Missouri, or I was in Arkansas part of the day, and it was miserable there too.
yeah,
So
it was pretty warm, and I was outside working all day yesterday, and it was pretty warm and thick. But that's it's July in the Ozarks.
it is.
So
Well,
this is
Darrell's here to
January.
update us on what's
Yep.
going on with the commissioners with their change to 1 day a week meeting. I don't get to cover those as often as I used to, and so I'm only updates I've been getting is what Stan's been putting together in the news items. So I'm sure there's something that among Darrell's list of things to talk about. I'm sure there's something that he needs to add and clarify and detail. So, Darrell, I'm just going to say get after it, and I'll ask questions as we go.
There you go. Okay. Well, yeah, as you mentioned, we are still just meeting 1 day a week on Mondays. For a long time, of course, we've met Mondays and Thursdays, but with the coronavirus deal and stuff and trying to just kind of reduce traffic and things, we just felt for a while here we'd go ahead and stick with 1 day a week. Now, it does compact a lot of work to try to get done in that 1 day. We try to get all the bills paid in a timely fashion, and then of course there's always payroll every 2 weeks. So, but at any rate, we're making it work. Sometimes we end up running after 12. The other day, I think it was a little after 1 or 1:30 before we finally got everything wrapped up. But first of all, I've got some exciting news I want to talk about on the Coronavirus Relief Fund, or they call it the CARES Act Fund.
Right.
As we've talked about before, the commission, the state got a pile of money from the feds in regards to the coronavirus pandemic, and to help with the cost and reduce the impact of the coronavirus on the state and on the local businesses or local governments and businesses. So the state sent that money out then to the counties, and so Dent County's portion of that, as we've talked about, was $1.8 million. We did put that in a separate fund, and the purpose of those dollars are it's really a two-part deal, is for public entities and to help cover their cost related to the COVID-19 emergency from March 1 of this year through December 30th of this year. Now, obviously, it's quite a long ways to go till we get through December, but at any rate, there's two parts. There was another part that's a private small business grants program that could be administered that counties could use to give to small businesses. Now, throughout this thing, all the paperwork and things from the feds have been very consistent that these monies could not be used to replace lost revenue, but they were to be used to reimburse costs associated with the pandemic and reimburse cost of closures. And so there's a lot of vagary in that we've been trying to unravel. It's pretty clear, though, that for the public entities, absolutely could not be used for revenue replacement.
Right.
In a lot across the state, revenues are down considerably since the pandemic hit. Interestingly enough, for Dent County, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago on the air, our sales tax revenue actually was up, but now for Road and Bridge, and we'll talk about that more in a minute, but Road and Bridge revenues, while sales tax is up, the CART money, which is the fuels tax, money's down. So it's down almost the same amount for Road and Bridge. So it's kind of
if there's one thing people should have learned from listening to Darrell on his program, is that these incomes that come to the county from the sales tax are never consistent, and you don't count them being what they were a year ago.
Exactly. You're right. You're right. When we budget for what it was last year, knowing that it can, and actually on a month-to-month deal, it can really vary widely.
Mm-hmm.
So you really can't take a month-to-month thing to really mean a whole lot. You really got to get through the year. And then, so at any rate, the county got $1.8 million. We immediately made money available to the public entities because it was very clear what the guidelines were there. So what we did, though, Dent County and the 5 other counties, there's 6 counties that have contracted with Merrimack Regional Planning Commission to handle the administration of these grants, to handle getting the information out, and they are working constantly on with the federal government and the state through the state treasurer's office, and the state treasurer's office has been great to work with. But to get further guidance and make sure that whatever we're doing application-wise and so forth falls within the guidelines. Another thing that was made very clear from the beginning is that there would be audits, and we will have to have an audit done of the county, and this will be a focus of that audit. And it was made very clear that if dollars were handed out to other entities, private or public, and it fell outside the guidelines of what it was allowed for, then the county will be responsible for paying those dollars back to the state, and then the state back to the feds. So it gets a little tricky, and so we just have to err on the side of caution to make sure that whatever we're doing falls within the guidelines. And there's, as we say, there's even differences of opinion within the federal agency people about what is allowed and what isn't on some of these things. So again, in the end, though, there seems to be general agreement right now that whether it's private small business or public cannot be used to replace lost income. It can only be used to cover costs associated with the emergency, but it can also be used for costs to cover what it cost a business as far as while they were shut down and closed.
Actual cost.
They can be used, and I'll read some of this what it can be here in a minute from our small business program. But at any rate, we've had it open for some time for the public entities. We've already approved 4 CARES Act applications for reimbursement and these were to some schools here in the county that immediately got their stuff together. R4 and R2 school had grants totaling about $67,000 in total for reimbursement. And so that was spread out amongst those. R2 school had 3 grants, and R4 school had one totaled about $47,000 for different things they were doing. And again, they can use these dollars, though, to also be getting ready to reopen school and all the various steps and measures and things.
Which makes it a little unique for schools compared to other entities, other businesses.
And they can use it to help with distance learning, if that's going to be.
Which they all are going, it sounds like they're going to have to do some increase and actual learning rather than what was done when school was shut down this past spring.
Right, to make it as good as possible. So we've already approved those. The thing that we were waiting on was the part for the small business grants program. We'd still like better clarification, but we think we got enough right now. This past Monday, we did approve Bonnie Prigge with MRPC and Kelly Sink, who is the main one in charge of this program for us at MRPC, came in and visited with us about some more thoughts on the CARES Small Business Relief Program. So we did approve getting that program rolled out to make these dollars available. So what we're doing, we've set aside of that $1.8 million, we've gone ahead and set aside $800,000 or earmarked $800,000 at this point to be used for the small business grant program. Be a maximum of $20,000 available for any one applicant. And I'll just kind of read here some of the things that we're making it available on an application basis to eligible entities for necessary expenditures incurred due to the public health emergency. The maximum funds available is $20,000 per request. Funds may only be used to cover costs that are necessary expenditures incurred due to the public health emergency with respect to the coronavirus and were incurred during the period that begins March 1, 2020 and ends on December 30th, 2020. Now then, to get into that a little bit further, the funds will be allocated to eligible and qualified small businesses, and we've set the definition of small business for Dent County. It's up to each individual county. We set that at 30 equivalent full-time employees or less to qualify as small business. To be eligible for qualified small businesses and nonprofits based on the availability of the funds how we're going along. Application and supporting documents are required for review and approval, and all grants will be processed on a first-come, first-served basis to qualified applicants. And now, and by the way, you have to understand that these applications are considered public information as well. We can't, they are. If
Don't be anything hidden.
If anybody
It's
would
out there.
request while somebody else is getting what business, it is public information. So that will be, for some people, that will be a major issue for them that they won't care
Has
for.
the
But
potential to be, yeah.
to be eligible, businesses must meet the following requirements. They must be a for-profit, independently owned business or independently operated franchise, or, and this is important, or a nonprofit organization. Nonprofits can apply as well. So there's been a lot of question about that. When we rolled nonprofits, we could have rolled nonprofits into the public entity portion, or we could have put them into this portion under the small business part. It's very clear if it's on the public entity side, there will not be any allowance for revenue replacement in that. There still is a possibility, as the feds review this as we go along, that they may open that up for a limited amount for revenue replacement, but frankly, I doubt it. But at any rate, if that was a possibility, we felt about as well off to put the nonprofits over on the small business side, and it really opens it up for them to fare a little better in that regard.
Makes sense.
Anyway, within the borders, they must possess, as applicable, a current city, county, state license or permits to operate. Again, that's as applicable. Some of them it doesn't apply. And must provide proof of business hardship created by the COVID-19, as in employee layoffs, added safety items, and added expenses. They must use the funds for operational needs, such as employee expenses, lease, mortgage payments. You can, if from March 1 through, if you were affected, you have to show how you were negatively affected by it. If it reduced your revenue, we can't replace the revenue. But if it did reduce your revenue, then these funds can be used to help pay for rent, mortgage payments,
Insurance.
utilities, materials, pretty much everything.
Yeah. Any operational expenses, just if you leave out the potential for revenue, it could basically about everything else. Right?
Yes, you can use it to cover
Might
your
be
cost
easier
of
just
operating.
to say, okay, anything but
Lost revenue. And then, of course, you have to be in compliance with all local, state, and federal non-discrimination policy, and be in good standing with city and county service providers, as in be current on your utility bills and no liens or judgments, property taxes hanging out, and some things like that. And again, we've set aside $800,000. There's $20,000 max. MRPC, as I talked about over at St. James, Merrimack Regional Planning Commission is handling the administration of this. And the best thing I can tell anybody who's interested, and I'm just giving you some real fast snapshot, please call. And of course, they're closed today for the holiday,
Right.
as most places are. But if you'll call MRPC, or you can go online and find this information as well from Merrimack Regional Planning Commission, the CARES Act applications. But you can talk to Kelly Sink, that's Kelly Sink, or Eva Voss at Merrimack Regional Planning Commission, and that phone number is 265-2993 for more information on this and how to go about applying. But it's pretty easy to apply, I think. And again, this information is just coming out. I see you guys, KSMO has pretty extensive coverage of it here on the in the Your World Today, and so
Stan put together some pretty detailed
yes,
article and report about the county commission's decision and
well,
approach
he
to it.
was sitting there with us when we went through all
Absolutely.
this with.
Well, Stan, we want to
RBC.
know from a standpoint of how it affects KSMO radio, just like
Sure.
how it affects other businesses. We're a for-profit business, and we want to find out what needs to be done and how make sure that we get all our T's crossed and I's dotted. The old adage.
I would
there.
encourage any business to, look into this and do what you can. We've set aside $800,000 right now, mainly because it's such a long time still yet between now and December 30th.
Right.
These funds have to be expended by December 30th by the county. Now, we set a deadline for anybody applying of December 10th.
Right.
Now, I know that sounds kind of funny when they
It
got to be,
does.
it's for expenses, but those applications have to be in by December 10th. MRPC staff is doing this for 6 counties, and they go over those applications and they contact those applicants if there's something left out that they need, so forth and so on. They can get those I's dotted, T's crossed. By December 10th, hopefully a person will have an idea then, if they're still applying, what expenses they have to cover going through for the entire month. But they have to, MRPC, Regional Planning Commission, has to get those applications then back to the county commission, and we have to get them looked over and approved, and the checks cut out of that account by December 30th. And any funds that we haven't used by then, according to the current rules, then have to be returned to the state.
Right.
So that's why the the December 10th deadline that we put in that. So,
Makes sense. It does sound funny when I read that article to stand prepared and give those dates. It sounds kind of funny, but then if you think through the process, it's very clear why it's set for that early in the month of December.
Really, it would have made more sense had they said we had until January 30th of next year to get those funds expended for expenses that were incurred through December 30th. But they're saying it's for expenses through December 30th, and we have to have the last check cut before December 30th, by December 30th. So, Congress done what it done, and they wrote the bill, then they wrote the thing, and so the feds are trying to work within the guidelines of what that was and figure out the intent. I spent 90 minutes on a conference call, actually 2 weeks ago when we done this program. I had to leave to go sit on a conference call with the lead legal counsel, Dan Kowalski, who's chief lead attorney for the U.S. Department of Treasury, and discuss this very thing because this is coming through Department of Treasury. It was a 90-minute call. He emphasized more than once that these funds could not, rather for private or public entities, be used for revenue replacement. But he did indicate, though, that he thought there was a lot of latitude going to be given as far as in covering expenses through this period, and because they want the money to be used to help them. But he said, but the way it was written could not be used for revenue replacement. Now then, about the time we got done with the conference call, he indicated that it wouldn't be up to them to enforce it anyway. It would be up to the Inspector General to interpret and enforce, and you're not really getting anything from the Inspector General as to what they will, how they're going to interpret it and read it. And then Mr. Kowalski then at the end made sure we understood that all this was just his opinion and should not be considered legal advice. So
it's not funny at all, and I'm sitting here smiling, which of course our listeners can't tell that, but I remember reporting that from the 2 week ago phone call that Darrell was on, and get down to 90 minutes later, an hour and a half later, find out that it may or may not be right.
And that really we didn't really learn anything more than we were already hearing and trying to get answers to when the call began. But except that he was emphasizing these things. So we also, the commissioners, Larson and Purcell and I, we attended a meeting at Rolla, not this week, but last week on Wednesday. We attended about a 2.5 hour meeting with the Missouri Association of Counties, Travis Elliott, attorney. He's our attorney for Missouri Association of Counties. Travis Elliott from Ellis, Hammonds and Johnson's law firm down at Springfield. He's been working consistently on this for quite some time since it first come out, and he's been talking with federal and state people as well. We also had a lady, I can't remember her name now, but first name's Tammy. She's with the auditing firm that does the audits for Merrimack Regional Planning Commission, and their firm will be some of those that will be doing the audits on these counties. So she was just going over that from the information they have right now, what they would be looking for, because it will be up to those auditors, first of all, to look at how you've handled it, and whether you've handled it how they believe is consistent with the guidelines that they're hearing from the Fed. So you got this. First of all, you're going to have to try to meet the criteria of the auditor, but the auditor agreed even that they don't have clear guidance yet as to how it will be. So that's why I say we're going to err on the side of caution, because the last thing we want is for some of our businesses and our people to get the dollars, and then the Feds, we get determined that it was that didn't qualify, and then the county have to turn around and pay it back. Now, in this application, with people who apply, they'll find they have to fill out an application, they have to fill out a form, they have to fill out an agreement that basically says if it's determined these funds are not eligible under the CARES Act, then they have to repay those funds to the county.
Which
Yeah.
makes sense, but the other side of the coin is, businesses are having a difficult time. Coronavirus is not going away.
Right.
Who knows whether they would have any
That's the last, right.
money to repay.
That's the last thing. That is absolutely, to me, the worst nightmare scenario that we get called.
It sure is.
These businesses, this money didn't count, so therefore, you got to pay it back, and it's up to you to get it back from them. Wow. So.
And of course, if you've paid attention to our listeners, I'm referring to when I say you, paid attention to the reports on county revenues, we know that there's not a surplus there with the drop in sales tax and the different tax receipts. There's not a surplus there to repay a possible incorrectly funded expense.
Right. Well, that's why we're going to
Err on the side of caution.
totally on the side of what everybody
Makes sense.
agrees are eligible.
Yeah.
The attorney from Springfield argues that with their wording in it, part of their wording would say that revenue replacement would be eligible on the small business side. But he agrees that nobody from the feds is willing to agree that that is going to be allowed. So at this point, it's just going to be used to help cover any expenses, whatever expenses they've had. But to get clarification and any questions, please call over to Merrimack Regional Planning Commission. Talk to Kelly Sink or Eva Voss. You can go online. You can email with them, correspondence too. And that's where the applications will come from, and they will handle those applications and do the one-on-one. Because as you can imagine, there's a lot of back and forth work that has to be done to get these applications. Because as they get these in, they're in contact with the folks. You know what? Looks okay, but we need more information about how this is COVID-19 related and why. Just because the money's there, don't mean you can say, "Oh, we were negatively impacted and we need $20,000." That won't cut it. That won't get you a penny. I can tell you.
Actually, Darrell just answered a question I was going to ask, and that was, well, really, why did the commission decide to work with the MRPC? And he really just answered that if you listen carefully in terms of the amount of stuff, and you've got a group that's they're not partisan.
And they handle grants. That is what they do.
Exactly. It's amazing when you get the opportunity to see the number of grants that MRPC takes care of. Yeah, that's their bailiwick. Sure is.
Bob has graciously accepted nominating. I nominated Bob to serve on the MRPC board in a couple of different facets. He's an alternate, I think, still for the Transportation Advisory
Correct.
Committee, but also serves on the MRPC board itself, representing agriculture. And so it is pretty eye-opening if a person ever involved as to
Absolutely.
what all they cover and the broad swath that they cover as far as just helping counties. And I know they've gotten some bad raps. People have been unhappy before because of that. They only do what the board directs
Exactly.
and forwards and approves for them to do and pursue.
It's quite a resource, and the other thing that we might mention, I do realize that we did receive an email too that the governor did decrease the amount of funds to
Regional planning.
RPCs, so they're operating under a different situation too because of everything that's going on with COVID-19.
Right. Yeah. The state revenues have really drastically fallen off all across the state. MoDOT revenues fallen off drastically as a result of the thing. You know, where we're down about 8% for monies that we receive from the fuels tax. Well, that corresponds straight across directly to MoDOT, because if our funds are down for CART money, you can be guaranteed if that's general. Now sometimes it'll be a local deal for some reason we'd be off, but generally across the state those monies are down drastically. MoDOT's down, the state as a whole, and the governors. I wouldn't want to be in the governor's shoes at all, having to make these decisions, these cuts across the board that they're having to make.
It's tough.
And
Tough situation.
And I don't know. I've got we got an election coming up. Medicaid expansion is on that, and there's a lot to be said for that. But you also, when you get into the weeds of the information on that, there'll be a lot of federal money come. But then at some point, then that falls back. And you look at the situation the state's in right now with funds having to be cut because of revenue deal. Boy, I tell you what, it's a pretty tough time to be looking at expanding any government state program,
Right.
until we get a handle on where we're at. But anyway, I'm not gonna say vote yes or no on that. That's not our point here. It's just a tough situation we're in right now, just to get through these economic times. And we're positioned pretty well. We've got an excellent balance in our GR. We got good balance for our road and bridge, and and we're in a kind of a unique situation here. And things our sales tax revenue, as we said, was up a little bit. So year to date we're up. That'll probably fall off some, but we've got some good balances to fall back on and get through this, and we can get along. Some counties a lot of counties aren't near as fortunate.
Such an excellent point. Being conservative in the past is definitely a benefit today with these difficult times that we're in economically as well as sociologically
Yep.
due to the COVID-19.
I serve on the County Commission Association of Missouri Board, and actually I'll be president of the County Commission Association next year. But I heard a commissioner that he's been on a presiding commissioner for years, many more. I mean, I've been on quite a while, but this gentleman been on 20-some years. But anyway, he made the comment the other day in a conference call we had. He goes, this absolutely had to be the most challenging, trying times that he'd ever been through as a county commissioner. That said, boy, he said, you gotta watch what you're doing, and just like in administering this CARES Act deal, you want to make sure you stand back. On the one hand, you'd like to just say, you know what, these businesses need $5,000 or $10,000, and we're going to put it out there. We got into, well, you got to be careful what you do, and you gotta step back and take kind of a reasoned approach, and that was the other thing what I started to get to a minute ago. We've set aside 800,000 right now. So we get on through this and get on into the fall and see where we're at. We may turn around and open this back up if to put another some more money in that portion of the program and make it out, because I'd like to see it all gone. I mean,
Sure.
If we don't use it, then it's going to be back. And it's kind of a double-edged sword here too. I tell you, this CARES Act deal that Congress approved, how we're ever going to pay for it, Bob, I
know.
I cannot imagine.
Stan and I have had that conversation just this week.
The federal government, what we've gone, we talk about the cost of wars and things, but I don't know. This thing wars may pale compared to the cost of trying to dig out of this thing and turn around and repay these dollars. But whatever, these dollars are here, and they're to be used by those public entities that were affected and had cost because of the COVID. So we'll try to get every one of them covered if we can, and whatever we can do for our businesses here that have suffered and had increased cost, or the nonprofits, if you will. There's a lot of nonprofits that do a lot of great work that have absolutely been drastically affected by this thing. So any monies we can get to them out of this, rather than send it back, then that's what we'll do.
Legitimate expense, fits the guidelines.
Uh-huh.
Going to be some help there.
Now then, there is one other. Dennis Purcell, Commissioner Purcell, serves on the South Central Community Action Agency, and as Dent County's representative on that board, and they also have COVID-related funds that have been earmarked for that agency to use. That agency has about, close to $850,000 available, and it is for individuals. It doesn't have to be businesses. It can be used for individuals for COVID-related expenses. They have to be low income. They have to meet low income guidelines, and if they were affected, it can be used to help them cover rent, utilities, etc. There's a plethora of things that can cover, but folks need to be aware of that. And again, that's through the South Central Community Action Agency. That's a mouthful. And again, that could be used by individuals. So any individuals that would be interested in that would need to call 729-3500. And again, these folks, I doubt if any of these folks are available today, because of the 4th of July holiday. But 729-3500 or 325-4255, and they can get you more information how to apply, or you can talk to Dennis Purcell, commissioner to courthouse, but he's basically going to refer you to these people. Call them. They've got the applications. He doesn't, and they can get you more information on that. So again, South Central Community Action Agency, that's 729-3500 or 325-4255. And then back on the other part for the, one more time, the phone number for Merrimack Regional Planning Commission is it's 573-265-2993. And ask for Kelly Sink or Eva Voss. Or if you just call the Merrimack Regional Planning Commission, tell them you're interested in CARES Act fund program, they'll get you to the right person.
To the right person.
And or if they're not available, they will call you back. But they are, as we talked about, this is what they do, handling grant deals. And this was going to be, I've heard some counties already decide they'd do it themselves, and they're already about to throw their hands up. And,
I can imagine.
About to panic. So I think it was a good call. I visited first with Randy Verkamp, presiding commissioner of Phelps County, when we first heard this money was coming to the counties. We were handing this out, and Randy and I agreed that Phelps County too. He goes, I think we're going to see if MRPC can handle the administration of this. This is going to be a huge deal. Of course, Phelps County got even more. The money was handed out on based on per capita. So larger counties, more population, got more dollars to put out. So anyway, that pretty well, I think, covers about everything that I know about CARES Act at this
CARES
point.
Act.
It's the money's there, and we hope to be able to get it out there to those public entities, private,
good deal.
Small business. Okay. As I mentioned, then we'll go ahead here and talk a little bit about the road and bridge. The CART funds are, as I've reported, they are down. You know, last week or 2 weeks ago, reported sales tax was miraculously up a little bit, and sales tax for road and just for road and bridge was up about $25,000 year to date. So then a week or so ago, the other shoe dropped, that our funding from CART for road and bridge was down $23,000. So anyway, so it's down about 7%, and it's probably going to be. So road and bridge sales tax was up about 8%, but CART's down about 7%. So there we go. And the only other thing the road and bridge are doing, just their regular grading, putting gravel on the roads, replacing pipes, crossover pipes, and so forth, repair and chip and seal roads and cutting brush. We did approve a bid for 7,000 gallons of diesel from your neighbor right down the street here, Phil Mart, at $1.39 a gallon. And we really do appreciate all of our local folks who bid those on those things. And that pretty well covers that. I'll mention on the jail, it's
we might mention one more thing, though,
Sure.
before we leave road and bridge. We're getting to that point with road conditions where it's getting more and more difficult to do that grading with these dry weather conditions. So folks just need to be patient. I know. I drive over some of those gravel roads, and we say, oh, gosh, that needs to be fixed. That needs to be repaired. But it is a continuing issue, whether the roads are too wet, too dry, or just right.
Right, it is. And this time of year, there'll be parts of the county where it's too dry to grade. And there'll be other parts of the county where for a day or two it's too muddy.
Yeah.
There were some parts of the county got rain this week, and other parts didn't get much. So it's that time of year when that happens, and when they get just too dry, it just you're just grading powder. It wets off the blades. You just end up grading powder that just really accomplishes virtually nothing. So do please keep that in mind, and the commissioners and the road and bridge guys are constantly monitoring that and trying to send the guys to grade where they can really grade and do some improvement to the condition. Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
I know you was ready to go to something else, but I know this time of year that's an issue that always needs to be reminded to our listeners, our residents in on those county roads, that hey, it gets tougher as it gets drier.
Right, and I had somebody ask something about, well, if when it's election year, do they grade some roads? That's because of no. There's that really, I don't believe that factors in whatsoever. They try to grade all the roads on a rotation. They've got down there. They can tell you when the last road was graded and when a road was graded before, and they try to get around all. Now, certainly because of different traffic patterns and traffic counts on some roads is more than others, and so some roads will have to be graded more than others because of that, and so forth and so on. There can be a logging activity taking place on a piece of property, and that road will probably need grading more, perhaps, depending on the time of year. And certainly we are not going to begrudge anybody doing timber work on their property, getting logs hauled and stuff. It is a part of our economy, just like everything else. So they just take them as they come and try to get them done. But you're right, this time of year it does become a challenge trying to get roads graded when you'd like to, because they're just too dry to grade. So yeah, thank you for reminding me about that. They will be coming up here pretty soon, though. We know we got lots of low water crossings. They try to replace some of those every year. Those have to be done when you're in some of your driest stretches. And typically August and September are your 2 months that are the most usually dependable for a dry section where you can get in and do those. When you're through the spring and up in through June, it's just almost impossible to really comfortably take out a crossing, a low water crossing. You know, in some of these, there's water running almost year round, so that makes it even more of a challenge trying to do. So they are looking at those, because that was one of the things we talked about when the quarter-cent sales tax was passed, was really two main things: get our chip and seal roads all back in better shape, and work on a bunch of these low water crossings we have that haven't had any attention just because the money just wasn't there. It's a pretty expensive process if you dig one out and completely redo it right. So they are looking at those. We've got those down and know what some of them are. It's just a matter of timing and try to get it done.
Okay.
So anyway, we'll mention a little bit over on the jail. The sheriff's department has moved prisoners over into the new jail, and it is fully operational. There's a little bit of work yet going to be done. They were coming in to replace the glass in the operations center, and that will be done. If it wasn't done this week, and I don't think it was, but it'll be done very shortly, and then we'll be pretty much 100% done. And Septagon Construction Management, Nick Smith with Septagon was in this week, and we're very near done with all of the paying of bills and so forth with that, and we're coming in under budget a little bit as we hoped we would. So everything looking good on that. Sheriff was in too, and he did request the commission approve the purchase of 2 new patrol cars. He had budgeted to buy 2 new ones off of the state bid. It'd be for 2 4-wheel drive Chevy Tahoes on, as I said, on state bid. And then we did approve then seeking the local lease purchase financing for those 2 vehicles. And we did open those bids already. Progressive Ozark bid was selected at 2.5% plus a $100 preparation fee. We did receive 3 bids from our local lenders for those for that lease purchase, and we do appreciate that. And also the sheriff did put out for bid on a used, older 2008 model Ford patrol car with a lot of miles. We did receive 3 bids, and the highest bid was approved to Schwartz LLC for $877.50. That was the high bid on that car.
Out the door on that old dog.
Out the door. That's right. Okay. Only just got a couple other things left. We do have an election coming up on August the 4th. Very important election. I hope folks will pay attention and look at the candidates that are running and ask questions and make a good educated decision when they vote. On July the 8th, it will be the last day to register to vote. So that's coming up, what is that, next Wednesday?
Yes.
Something like that.
Yes.
It'll be the last day you can register to vote for that election. And then July the 22nd would be the last day that you could request a ballot be mailed to you. And absentee voting is happening right now at the courthouse for that August 4th election.
Yeah, and don't put those things off. If you're going to request the mail-out ballot, get to that next week. Once the courthouse is back open. If you're going to do the absentee voting, get that done. If you need to is it still possible to make the name change? I don't remember the date on name changes or change of address. There was a date, and we reported that, and I don't know where that.
Well, if you've moved or you have a change of address to something, call the county clerk's office at 729-4144. Check it out to find out for sure then where your polling location is that you need to go to. Yes.
We're fortunate in our country to have this freedom, and you need to be able to exercise that freedom fully. So call the clerk's office, find out that information if you need it.
There you go. Yep. Be sure and do that. And as I said, absentee voting is going on right now. Yep. So anyway, and then the only other thing I've got is tomorrow is the 4th of July, and the Chamber of Commerce 4th of July parade will be going on. Begins at 6 p.m. over on the street by Southwest Baptist University. So, and it'll be proceeding down the regular parade route, only before it's always ended pretty much at the courthouse square, but now it will be proceeding on to, I believe it's Pershing Street is really where the end will be. And
Makes sense. That's where a lot of them went to anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Not sure.
Yeah.
Maybe you know why the change was made, but it's logical.
Yep. Yep, for sure. So, I believe that kind of covers the gamut of what all we had to kind of go over to this point.
Well, it's been a pleasure having Darrell in this morning. Would remind folks that Darrell pays for this time on KSMO Radio. Not 1 cent of county revenue is involved in paying for the time on KSMO Radio. It's always our pleasure to have him in every 2 weeks. And let's see, you'll be in again on the 17th. Will you have 2 programs or 3 programs this month?
Nope. Actually, what we do, it's the first and third Friday of every month. So after we're in the 17th, there'll be, it'll be 3 weeks before we're on again in August.
Long lull of what's going on in county business. So
right.
Anyway, 17th, about 8:30, tune in again, and Darrell will be here. And we always enjoy having him here. And anything else, Darrell, before we close it off?
I don't believe so. Thank you, Bob. I do appreciate it, the opportunity, and I hope we're able to share a little bit more detailed information than what you might have got by listening to the news reports and the things in the radio. The KSMO, Salem News both do a great job of covering our commission meetings, and we do appreciate that. But you all only have so much room and so much airspace to cover things, and we can sit here and in a more casual manner go through and cover a little bit more of the particulars of some things. Maybe throw in an editorial opinion here or there. But that aside,
that happens.
That's it. Well, that's the luxury. Since I pay for it, I guess I can throw in what I want to up to a point from here to there. But I try to stay away from too much of that. It's, as the guy used to say on the old show, just the facts, ma'am.
Just the facts.
Yeah. So anyway, we try to stick with that, and I hope you all learned something. And I do get a lot of nice comments from folks around that they've heard this or that and learned this and so on. So that's the whole point of it. I do appreciate the opportunity, and we will be back here in a couple of weeks on the 17th. And until we're back here, I hope everyone will be safe, happy, healthy. God bless each and every one.
All right, and that's your report from Presiding Commissioner Darrell Skiles.